It's Sunday, March 17th. Happy St. Patty's Day. Trying to bring this vlog up to being as current as possible. And I'm actually at Bay 101 Casino today in San Jose to put in an $1,100 tournament. Planning to vlog today, but as you know, it really depends on how deep you can run in these types of things to have it be content that is worthwhile. So given that I can't guarantee how deep I'm going to run today, not sure if this next vlog following this one will be at this particular location or elsewhere, but going to try to vlog today and hopefully get to share that experience with you all if I make it deep. But yeah, just a couple quick shares. I've actually got some other priorities lined up for the latter part of March, so not exactly sure when I can post the vlog following this one, but it will likely be sometime in April. But yeah, as far as poker plans goes for the next few weeks, going to be playing a $600 tournament at Lucky Chances on Sunday, March 31st. It's a 40K first place guarantee, so I'll hop into that. And the following day on Monday, April 1st, per a recommendation from a vlog watcher, I'm actually gonna be hopping into the Stones live stream. So shout out to Irish Eyes for making that recommendation. Kind of ironic, I think, to give you a shout out on this particular day, given that it's St. Patrick's Day, but perfectly fitting in that sense. And yeah, it should be a fun experience. It'll be my first live stream experience, but also because it's actually gonna be a 3-game mix that day. We're gonna be playing No Limit Hold'em, Pot Limit Omaha, and Omaha High Low. So get to dust off a little bit of the skills from a few years ago when I used to play a little bit more of horse in that 5-game mix, and see if we can put that to some use on Monday, April 1st. And then April 18th through the 21st, I'm actually going to be heading up to Reno for some tournament series. It's going to be put on by Run It Up, and so going to take a couple shots at some tournaments during that time, as well as cash games. Okay, so that's it for the updates and trying to bring this vlog current. Going to jump back in time now to 2 weeks ago when I did my last vlogging session, so I hope you enjoy. All right, it's Friday, March 1st. We're here at Lucky Chances Casino. It's been a really long time since I've been here. The last time I played cash games at Lucky Chances was in late December. And so going on about a little over 2 months now, I've been choosing to play most at Casino Matrix in San Jose. And so I didn't want to make the drive out tonight. I wanted to stay closer to San Francisco. And so we're going to be playing here for the next few hours. See if we can pick up where we last left off at the Grayton meetup game to see if we can continue some run good. And so yeah, let's hop on in it. It's Saturday, March 2nd, back here at Lucky Chances. The rain did not stop all night, so still super wet out here. Just sat down at the 3-5 game, and but before I hop into that session, just wanted to recap a few hands from last night. Our first notable hand comes in a straddle pot, under the gun 1 and 2 limp, small blind limps. I'm in the big blind with ace king offsuit, ace of hearts, king of clubs, and I put in a raise to $80. Under the gun 1 calls, leaving about $200 back. Under the gun 2 has $60 total, and he jams all in. Flop comes jack 8-5, all diamonds. Not a good flop, but it checks through. The turn comes a 5 of clubs, pairs the 5. I check it to under the gun 1, and he puts in a bet of $25. A little bit too small to just fold. and so I make the call. The river comes an ace, it checks through, I turn my hand over and we scoop this pot. Next hand comes early position limps. I'm in middle position with 2 red jacks and I put in a raise to $25. Folds over to the big blind and he puts in a 3-bet to $55 and it folds back to me, and this player does some rather interesting things in terms of some of his mannerisms. I played with him a few times over the last few years, and if any of you have recently watched the Live at the Bike stream of the $1 Million Cash Game, there's a pretty notable high stakes pro named Dan Smith who also has some unique mannerisms. I actually think they brought some light to that at the recent live stream, and this particular player that I'm up against now has some similar tendencies where he'll start in a hand with a certain posture and then he'll make different changes throughout the hand in terms of like timing tells and things like that. And he's been doing this pretty much every time I've played with him, and to be honest, I really don't know what to make of it. I'm someone who does find a lot of interest in things like live movements and body tells and things like that, and he does so much of these unique things that it's just really hard to get a read. So all that said, I decide to just call. We go heads up to a flop of queen 4 deuce 2 spades. He puts out a continuation bet of $60 and I make the call. The turn comes a 5 of clubs. He puts out another bet of $80 this time, and I don't think there's too much to do other than call, and that's what I do. The river comes a 4 of spades, not a good card, completes the front door flush, and he thinks it through for a bit before cutting out a bet of $165. I think he's pretty weighted here towards a hand like ace x of spades, which makes a lot of sense in this particular hand. That said, again, all these different mannerisms that he does throughout a hand definitely confuses me quite a bit, and because I haven't gotten to too many hands of showdown with him, I do want to get a little bit of information, and so I call. He turns over ace king of spades, so he scoops this one. Next interesting hand, I start this hand with about 800 effective. There's a low jack limp, the hijack raises to $35. The button calls $35, gets to be on the button with ace jack offsuit, and I decide to put in a 3-bet to $150. It folds back to the button, and only he makes the call. So go heads up to a flop of ace of diamonds, 7 of spades, 6 of spades. I decide to check it this time, as I would do with a majority of my range, whether I have ace king here, queens or kings. So I think it's a good spot to be checking to balance. And he puts out a bet of $150, and I make the call. The turn comes a 4 of clubs, and it goes check, check. And the river comes a 6, which pairs the board. And I check it over to him, and he cuts out a pretty large bet. He bets $350. And so the problem with this hand is that I do have the ace of spades in my hand, so it makes it less likely that he had a flush draw and is bluffing here. That said, the 6 makes it less likely that he has a hand like pocket 6s. And so the only couple hands that I'm really afraid of are pocket 7s, although I don't know if he'd check back that turn with a flush draw, and then ace queen. I don't put him on ace king because I feel like he would have put in a 3-bet himself pre-flop, and so kind of narrowing things down, I feel like there's more bluffs in his range instead of a hand like ace queen, so I decide to make the call, and he mucks his hand, so take this one down. All right, it's a straddle pot, and there's a couple limpers to me, and I get jack 8 of clubs in the cutoff, and I put out a raise to $65, and only the button calls. We go heads up to a flop of ace king 5 rainbow with 1 club. I put out a continuation bet of $55, and he makes the insta fold. The reason I wanted to highlight this hand is that although it's a fairly quick and dirty hand, and on the surface level there isn't too much happening here, I think it's important to look at things like range versus range in this spot, something that can be learned from this particular spot. So when I raise pre-flop and he doesn't put in a 3-bet, I can effectively rule out some of the higher range hands that he could potentially have, hands like aces, kings, ace king. And because he doesn't put in a 3-bet and I'm the pre-flop aggressor, I can have those hands on this board. So despite having jack 8 of clubs here in this hand and not having much direct equity based on that board, with only a backdoor straight and flush draws, that's why I decided to make a continuation bet with range advantage here. He actually told me that he did indeed have 9-10 suited, and so that's actually a good hand for him to 3-bet, I think, on occasion from his position, especially to my cutoff open. Especially because we are, I think we were 300 blinds deep. So just something to be learned in this spot to assess your range, even if it's a small, minuscule pot. It's important to kind of pay attention to those details. All right, next interesting hand. The table's been playing fairly passive, and I decide to get out of line for the first time in the session. It folds to me in the cutoff, and I have jack 3 of spades, and I put in a raise to $20, expecting the remaining players to fold most of the time. That doesn't happen. Button, small blind, and big blind call. So we go 4 ways to a flop of king 7-6, 2 spades. Really good flop a flush draw here. Checks to me up. I put out a continuation bet of $50 and only the big blind calls. Turn is a gin card. It's a 9 of spades. He checks it to me. He's got about $140 left, and I put enough to bet him all in. He makes the quick call, and the river is a king of diamonds, I believe. I turn my hand over, and it's good. Last interesting hand, there's a straddle pot, there's a couple limps, and an early position player raises to $40. He's been a fairly splashy player, so the fact that he also raised a bit small doesn't look like his hand is too strong. Gets to me on the button with king queen offsuit. I decide to isolate and put in a 3-bet to $110. Folds back to this player, and he makes the call. We go heads up to a flop of king 8-5, 2 spades. He checks it. I put out a bet of $100, and he min raises it to $200, leaving about $400 back. I decide to make the call. Turn comes a 10 of clubs, and he decides to check it rather quickly. Looks like a pretty big sign of weakness, but because there is a flusher out there, I want to make sure to not just let a free card come out. And I put in enough to put this player all in, and he decides on a quick fold. So that closes off last night's session. I was in the game for $1,600. I had to add on $600, and I was stuck around $800 at one point, but battled back and booked a $112 win. So nice to wrap that session up, having played rather poorly to start. Found some good spots to pick up some chips and get out of Stuck City. And so back here today, gonna put in a few hours and see if we can run it up today. We're here at Seramonte Mall. It's down the block essentially from Lucky Chances. And yeah, just closing out a session here. Gonna recap a few hands here. All right, first interesting hand happens. There's a couple of early position limps. I'm gonna cut off with Queen Jack offsuit, Queen of Diamonds, Jack of Clubs, and I bump it to $30 and only the button calls. We go heads up to a flop of King 10-9 all diamonds. Flop the straight here with a straight flush redraw. Continuation bet for $25. The button raises it to $90, and I decide to call. The turn comes a deuce of spades, blank card here. I check it over to the button, and he bets $140. I call. So the river comes a 7 of spades. It's a blank card. I've got about $630 left in my stack, and decide to put out a small bet of $130. Looking to accomplish a couple things here. One, get value from a weaker hand and potentially use this as a way to induce him to spaz, perhaps. And he jams all in for 630 effective. And it's a bit of an interesting spot now because I don't block any 2-pair or set combos, which I think he can have, and he could potentially raise these hands for value on the river because I'm probably not having a flush there too often. The second part of the thought process is that I do have the Queen of Diamonds in my hand, so he's less likely to have a flush. So I also don't have the Ace of Diamonds, which would be the nut blocker that he could essentially use to turn into a bluff here. So yeah, it's sort of a crappy spot here, but because I do have the Queen of Diamonds in my hand, that ultimately for me was the deciding factor to decide to make the call. And he turns over the bad news. He has Ace-8 of Diamonds, so he does have the nut flush. And yeah, lose this one. So yeah, probably a little bit of a loose open by me pre-flop. Definitely a leak that I have on occasion for sure. But when I get a flop like that, it's a little bit hard to get away from this strong of a hand. All right, next interesting hand. There's a couple limps, and it gets to me on the button. And I've got Queen Jack again, Queen of Hearts, Jack of Clubs. And I decide to raise it to $30, and only the late position limper calls. The flop comes Jack 7-3 Rainbow. He checks it over to me. I put out a bet of $30, and he calls. The turn brings a 7 of Diamonds, pairing the 7 and bringing in a backdoor flush draw. He checks it over to me. I don't think I can get 3 streets of value here, so I decide to check as well. The river comes a 4 of hearts. He puts out a bet of $55. I make the rather quick call, and he turns over ace queen offsuit. So take this one down with queen jack here. The next hand, the hijack raises it to $20. I'm on the button with 8-9 of clubs, and I decide to put in a 3-bet to $65. Gets back to this player, and he makes the call. So we go heads up to a flop of queen 7-7 rainbow. He checks it over to me. I put a pretty small bet out of $50, and he makes the quick fold. And just one quick note about this hand, as it ties into something I talked about earlier, is that when I put in a 3-bet and the board comes out queen 7-7, and I make a continuation bet there, it's another good example of kind of using your range to your advantage. I think putting them in a pretty tough spot when I 3-bet them and then continuation bet, I can rep aces, kings, ace, queen, a lot of hands that beat them in that spot. So just remember to kind of always assess your ranges relative to the positions and the players that are in the pot, and it'll help you arrive at some useful decision making. Okay, last interesting hand to share. I'm on the cutoff with 9-10 of diamonds, and I bump it up to $20, and both blinds decide to defend. We go 3 ways to a flop of 9-6 deuce rainbow. Checks to me. I put out a continuation bet of $40. The small blind calls, and the big blind raises it to $140. And I'm not ready to fold yet, so I decide to call, and the small blind folds. The turn is a very good card. It's a 10 of hearts, giving me 2 pair now. But he doesn't stop betting. He puts out a bet of $225. He's got about $700 back, and I consider going for a raise, but the most obvious straight draw does hit here, being 7-8, and so to continue staying somewhat well disguised, I just decide to flat call here. All right, the river locks up the hand for us. It comes a 9 of spades, and he checks it this time, and I put out a rather large value bet of $510. He tanks for a bit and decides to fold. So we win this one. I think if I don't make a full house on the river, I'm probably getting a little bit more value against a hand like queens or jacks, which is what it feels like he has in this spot. But nevertheless, happy to take this one down. So yeah, I was in the game for $2,000. I cash out $1,550 to book a loss of $450. Couldn't recover fully from that queen jack hand after getting stacked there, but to be able to battle back a little bit and not book a 4-figure loss, I'll take it for this evening. And so yeah, that wraps things up for this vlog. I have some dinner plans to get to in a little bit, but as mentioned, I'm here at Seramonte, so we're gonna go do a little bit of retail therapy to recover from this session. And with that, I will see you all on the next one.